Narcissistic parents will set you up to end up in toxic narcissistic relationships.
Hey guys, go listen to the rest of her story. I'm going to tell kind of a similar story because it has to do with the silent treatment, but essentially, she's talking about how a lot of times when you're raised by a narcissistic parent or narcissistic parents, it sets you up to be in a marriage or a relationship with narcissistic people as well. Kind of, you're like perfectly groomed for it in a sense, which is kind of sickening when you think about it. But, your parental figures are the ones who kind of show you what love is and show you what's acceptable behavior and how you treat your significant other. And unfortunately, that includes, even if it's really unhealthy, that's what you learn love is. And so then you go out and you seek that in your romantic relationships. And a lot of times, if you're raised by toxic people, you will end up in a toxic romantic relationship. Especially if you're not aware of this pattern, right? So the link that I had was that my mom, her go-to punishment was the silent treatment. And so my mom would never go weeks with the silent treatment, like in her story, but mainly I think it was due to us. Like, we had a hard time going that long in the silent treatment, so we would do everything we can. During this time, you're walking on eggshells. You're trying to do everything you can to make her happy. You're making sure that, you're doing all your chores extra quick, or, trying to, just let her know that, like, you're gonna do whatever she needs so that way she'll talk to you again, and she'll show love again as a parent and be there for you when you need her. And so that is kind of what we were groomed to do. So there's no surprise that I ended up in a marriage where my ex-wife's go-to punishment was the silent treatment. So my ex-wife also didn't do silent treatments for weeks at a time, but again, mainly because I could not handle that. The max that I could go in a silent treatment was 3 days. That was the absolute max that I could go in completely like unregulated nervous system, high anxiety, before I would just give in and apologize or do whatever I needed to end the silent treatment. This is going to make more sense later, because in the next part, I'm going to actually tell the two stories of that are actually linked together, but about how my mom and my ex-wife gave the silent treatment and why it is so damaging to do to people. And so the insidious thing about silent treatments is, a lot of times the silent treatment forces the other person, who didn't do anything wrong most likely, to apologize. And when you are apologizing for something they did, they don't have to hold themselves accountable for anything. They don't have to make any changes, because they know exactly how to get you to take responsibility and apologize for something you didn't even do. So stick around for part 2, and I will... Hey guys, so this is part 2 of how narcissistic parents often groom you to end up in narcissistic romantic relationships later. So in part 1, I talked about like the go-to for kind of punishment that my mom did was a silent treatment. Therefore, I married somebody whose go-to punishment was the silent treatment. And so now I want to tell a story of how eerily similar my ex-wife and my mom were. Okay? It's going to be kind of hard for me to tell, I think. But so I've mentioned in other videos that in 2020, I was getting very, very ill because of my toxic marriage. And then at the end of that year, by the time I got COVID, it ended me in the hospital. I was so incredibly sick, and that was one of the scariest experiences of my life, because I genuinely thought that I was going to die. I did not think I was going to make it out of there. A lot of my family didn't think I was going to make it out of there. And I was very scared. But so during the time that I was in the hospital, I remember, when I could get the energy to talk to my ex-wife while I was in there, I remember telling her, because as I was away from her, I would kind of start to get clarity a little bit, because I wasn't under her control as much and her manipulation. And so I remember during that time thinking, oh my gosh, this is a wake-up call. If I make it through this, like, things must be different after this. And so I remember telling her when I was in the hospital, like, if I make it out of here, things are going to have to change. I cannot continue in this marriage like this, or like it's not going to be good for me. And I remember her saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you think needs to change, but you're my whole world. You're everything to me. I love you so much. But I remember like it was just so fake when she said it. Like it wasn't really coming from her heart and like that she really cared about me. It was like what she thought I needed to hear to just let it go, right? And I just remember telling her, I don't want to talk about while I'm in the hospital. I want to talk about it in person. I'm just letting you know that these are the things I've been thinking about. That things will need to be different if I make it out of here. I ended up finding out later that she did actually talk to that woman that she had an affair with the entire time I was in the hospital. So yay for that. So she cared so much, right? So anyways, the day finally comes that I get released from the hospital and she comes and picks me up. So she comes and picks me up and, during this time, we were just starting to transition the foster kids that we had into their permanent home. And so they had been there in the other home quarantined because, you know, my ex-wife had been exposed to COVID. I had COVID. So, when she picked me up, the first thing she said was, now we can go get the boys and we can like, you know, have some more time with them before they transition over there and everything. But what she didn't know is the doctor, as I was signing my discharge papers, was like, you need to be in quarantine for another 10 days. Don't bring anybody else into the house. Like, you still need a lot of rest. And so I told her, hey, the doctor just told me, like, we can't bring the boys back in. I have to be quarantined for another 10 days. And she became super upset. Did you know this before? Why didn't you tell me this sooner? I was like, because I literally just found out when I signed my discharge papers. Okay. And so then she started just crying. And I understood, like, it's sad that we're not going to get the boys back right away, but we could have gotten them back after I was healthy and had our closure with them and had that final transition. I knew the other parent who was going to adopt them would have absolutely allowed that. And so for me, I was just like, I said, hey, I know that this is really sad for you, but I just almost died. And I really need you right now. And she became irate. She told me, how dare you ask me to be there for you while I'm grieving? You're selfish. This is something you need to do on your own. It's not my responsibility to help you work through these feelings that you're having. And she was upset. Didn't talk to me the rest of the time in the car. Goes to drop me off at the house. And then leaves. So she says she's going to, I have to be careful with my words. She says she's going to unalive herself and then left. Okay. Now, I'm going to do another whole video about the whole threatening to unalive yourself because that's also very messed up to do as a manipulation tactic. But, so she left, wouldn't answer her phone, wouldn't answer her text messages. And I tried to call her mom. I assumed she had called her mom as well, but her mom wasn't answering me. And she was gone for like 2 or 3 hours. Finally comes home, is completely like amped up, screams at me, don't touch her, don't touch her. Says, I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want to talk to you. Goes straight downstairs and, you know, shuts herself into the spare bedroom and doesn't talk to me for 2 full days. 2 days. After this has happened hours within picking me up from the hospital from almost dying. All right, this is part 3 of how having narcissistic parents grooms you to have narcissistic romantic relationships. So I was telling the story of how my wife picked me up from the hospital from almost dying of COVID and then becomes upset with me and gives me the silent treatment for 2 days afterwards. So just to give you an idea of what this did to my psyche. First of all, in the hospital, anybody who's ever been hospitalized knows that like you don't actually get a lot of rest in there. Okay, there are people coming in and waking you up like every 3 hours to give you more medication, poke you with needles, check monitors. Like, your monitors are constantly going off, so it's noisy. There's not a lot of rest happening in there, not like real sleep. And so I was so looking forward to just getting home, being able to be in my bed, not hooked up to a bunch of monitors and having needles all stuck in me and stuff, and just be able to like have my wife just hold me and tell me that she loves me and that she's going to be there for me, that I'm going to be okay. Except that didn't happen for me. I Well, she was giving me the silent treatment for 2 days. During that time, I don't know what to do with myself, right? Like, I don't want to go to sleep because I'm still afraid that I might not wake up. I am hurting all over. Like, my belly was just black and blue from all the needles they stuck in me to give me things. My central line that was in my arm looked pretty gnarly and it hurt. And so I just try to keep myself busy. So during the time that I was in the hospital, apparently she didn't keep up on any of the housework. So there was like literally 10 plus bags of garbage just sitting on the deck waiting to be hauled back to the trash can out in the alley. And so like I am not 100%, obviously. Like my lungs still hurt. My oxygen isn't completely all the way back to normal. I'm having a hard time breathing, but I'm sitting here hauling trash back to the alley very slowly, a little at a time until I get all that. I have to clean the house because it's dirty and just like things that need to be done, but also just to keep my mind busy during this time because I am very adamant that like I did not deserve this, although it was still hard for me to like not want to just try to stop the silent treatment, right? But I knew like I didn't deserve this. After 2 days, she hears me clanking around up here and finally sends me a text message that says, turn the stove off, bring Odin down here because we'd just gotten the dog. He was a little puppy. Bring Odin down here and come here. And so I went downstairs, opened the door of the spare bedroom, and she goes, come lay down in bed. And I remember just going to her and laying down because I just wanted her to hold me. Even though she was so mean, I knew that I shouldn't have done that. That was probably worse for my psyche. But I just wanted her to hold me and tell me everything was going to be okay. She still didn't really talk to me. She just let me lay down next to her, but she didn't really hold me or tell me she loved me or apologize or anything. And I remember laying there thinking like, this is over. Like, I cannot do this anymore. And it was so sad. We of course like work through that. Like obviously we're not allowed to talk about it. And so I just kind of pretended like the whole thing didn't go on and just try to like move on. But I know that that's something I need to talk with my therapist. And that's when my therapist and I were like, okay, I need to navigate out of this marriage. And I started to work through that. But during that time, so for about a month after that, my mom is also messaging me telling me, hey, I'd really like you to go to church with me. When you were in the hospital, I prayed to this saint. My mom's Catholic. And so I really want you to go to church and light some candles with me. Now, anybody who knows me, my mom including, I am an atheist. Okay. And I do not believe in the existence. I don't think there's enough evidence in a deity or anything like that. So that was just never going to happen. Okay. And so when like a month later, my mom calls me up and says, hey, are you awake? I'm going to come pick you up. And I go, I just woke up. Where are we going? And she goes, oh, we're going to church today. And I was like, Mom, I've already told you this. Like, I'm not going to church with you. Okay. Like, that's not going to happen. Okay. Like you're welcome to go and light your candles to the saint you pray to, but like that, I'm not doing that. And she said, you're a fucking asshole. And I hung up on her. And my mom didn't talk to me for like 3 months. In fact, she didn't talk to me until March of the next year, which is when my ex-wife and I separated. Those two incidents back to back really showed me how linked my relationship with my mom and my ex-wife were, and it just floored me.